Welcome to the Center Porch. This is your host, Mark Schaffner. This is the place for news and perspective where we can talk about anything. While we have things going on in the news in certain areas, there is a court case that I'm going to use to start this off with that is taking place over the last couple of days. As we know, the January 6th hearings are in to deal with the whole act of insurrection. Um Here in Indiana, we have the state legislature debating over the abortion issue. But reading through uh, some local news, yesterday the defamation trial started for Alex Jones. Now, for those of you who do not know who Alex Jones is probably the foremost conspiracy theorist in the United States. At least he has been since uh, Trump gave him some credibility. What he's going to court today for is his version of the Hook shooting. Now, for those who don't remember, and I hope that you never forget, Sandy Hook was a mass shooting at an elementary school at Sandy Hook Elementary. A lot of people died. The shooter killed his mother first, then went to the school and shot some children. Alex Jones played into this like he does a lot of mass shootings, that the whole thing, there was no shooting. It was a conspiracy set up by the gun control lobby and the extreme left. They hired a bunch of actors and put on a good show. And he said this about a few others. But today, because he's already been convicted of defamation in the trial, today's court hearings are to determine how much he financially give the victims of Sandy Hook. And let's never forget the victims of Sandy Hook in places like Uvalde, Las Vegas, one of the reservations, because these people died senselessly because of the maniacal character of one or two people in each situation. But this gentleman come out and said that, the whole thing was fake, that it's just a ploy, that they hired actors so they would have the ability to put in full head on gun control, confiscate all weapons. And it got me to thinking. As we go through, say, the last 20, 30 years, because conspiracy theories have been around for a long, long time. In this country, one of the first conspiracies that I heard about was the JFK assassination, and the lineage of groups that people say created that issue. It was Cuban sympathizers or the CIA or the mob, and so we have to actually go by the Warren report, which says it was a lone shooter. Now, I don't necessarily believe it was a lone shooter, but I don't believe that there was a huge conspiracy theory about it. I figured if somebody wanted to make a play for one reason or another and did what they did. But this story about Alex Jones, and I ran into him a couple of times back when I was a journalist doing stories. Back about 2010, he had out a story that during the Obama administration, some National Guard units and military personnel were running this is out in Southwest United States, and that they were there as part of the Obama's administration to confiscate weapons and to take personal property, and just let your mind flow with that, because he had about 8, 9 different reasons as to why it was going to happen. when all it was a training exercise. They saw the same thing down in Florida, and he been saying, "Oh, it's they're using posse comitatus to come in and use the military against U.S. civilians." And so I decided to take a look at some conspiracy theories, not just by him, but some of the more radical ones uh, that people have talked about over the last few years, I mean, the last couple of decades. And I titled this tinfoil hat because, to be perfectly honest with you, some of these people got their tinfoil so tight on their head that it's cut off the blood flow and all of that good stuff. And so we got to take a look at some of these and just see how ridiculous they actually sound, considering some of this we actually know a lot of the facts. So the most current one from this gentleman, this Alex Jones, he's on internet, and his show is called Info Wars. If you want to go see how radical and psychotic this man is, go check it out. Although he has been barred from a lot of social media, so I don't know if you'd be able to find him that instantly or not. One of the most modern ones was during the COVID pandemic. He was one of the big guys on the forefront yelling, "Go take the horse medicine. Go take the horse medicine. It works." And somebody who works in agri retail, has worked on farms, has been in ag on and off half of his life, if not more than half, the man's an idiot. Now, there is an ivermectin style medication that is prescribed by doctors. Entirely different thing, just the name. Now, it does give some of the same benefits as the paste does, but the paste is specifically designed for livestock, horses. Those are the animal kingdom, not human consumption. So that's stuff that this man spews out of his mouth. And the bad thing about it is when Trump came into the political scene, Alex Jones got to the point that he must have felt truly vindicated, because here's somebody else. Now, there are good things that Trump did. We had a great economy. We were reworking trade negotiations. But Trump used what all politicians use, something to hook his intended audience. For Trump, it was the New World Order cabal to, take over everything. And that's actually going to play into at least one or two of our conspiracy theories. But Mr. Jones, I hope you had to pay a whole lot of money, so much that you actually have to go broke, because you put these people through more pain than they've already gone through with the loss of their loved ones. And no parent should need to see their child be put in a hole in the ground in a box, and you making money and political points and social media points on it. It's not only sick, it's also demented. So I hope they take you for everything that you got. That being said, the first one I'm going to talk about is one that we see creep up all the time. It's about the Holocaust. As we all know, the Holocaust, the Nazi regime eliminated 6 million Jews. What they don't necessarily talk about is the other 5 million non-Jews that they considered undesirable, such as enemy combatants, those with mental health issues, gypsies, anybody that he thought didn't fit his mold of what humanity should be. 11 million people died. If you don't believe me, you go to the different places like Buchenwald and Auschwitz, and they have memorials, and some of them still have some of the trimmings up to show you what kind of horror that these people went through. So there are people that still say it didn't happen, never happened. Yeah, well, I've met a few people throughout my life that had the number tattoo on their arm. I've read the stories of the survivors and the people that didn't survive. And I'm sorry, but the pictures from the military, To perpetuate that kind of a hoax on the entire world, the logistics of being able to do that is just so mind-boggling, can never happen. So, but according to these people, you look at all of the photographs and check all of the information brought in by the Russian and the rest of the alliance during that war that came into contact with these places. Apparently, all were doctored. Yeah, well, tell that to the people that were there that are still alive. Tell that to the families who grew up not knowing different family members because of this atrocity. This is why we who support Israel say never again. That is definitely anti-Semitism at its finest. To try to erase an entire group of history. Another one that in 1990s. Now, for those of you who were born uh, millennium and on, you've heard stories about Princess Diana, the former wife of Prince Charles of England. She was a great humanitarian. She fought against landmine use and other things. But she died in a car accident. She was being chased by the French paparazzi. Her driver had been a little tipsy. She ended up wrecking, ended up killing her and her fiance. And of course, the theories immediately came out that the royal family had this done because she was marrying a foreigner, and you know she had come out with statements on her life as within the royal family, and so her fiance's name was Dodi Fayed, and of course his background is Egyptian and Muslim. Um, of course, some things came out, like Dodi's father had said that Diana was pregnant. It was later confirmed that she wasn't. Um, and since the driver was drunk, I don't know how drunk. I don't know what the legal statute of drunk is over in England or France or anywhere over there in Europe. But one of them came out and said that, oh, the driver, he worked for the intelligence services of England. And another one was that the medical care wasn't proper, or that she was killed for this reason or that reason. And it was a fatal accident. And for anybody who's lost a loved one or been in a drunk driving accident as a victim of a drunk driver, there are questions that play in the head, but those questions generally run along the idea of, was he too drunk? Were his reactions faulty? Not in this case, no. Did the government kill her? Did the royal family kill her? Was she taken out by, Muslims who her marrying Mr. Dog? I had a lot of stuff. She was a victim of a tragic accident with the person that she loved under the drivership of somebody who had too many. The paparazzi got involved. He was trying to get away from the paparazzi, and his inebriation didn't allow him to do what needed to be done, and he ended up wrecking the car, and they died. God rest their souls. Hope to see him on the other side. But that's what it was. It was a tragic accident where everything just fell into place for it to occur. One of the biggest ones here in America comes from 9/11, believe it or not, and I've heard all of these. In fact, the desire to understand the towers coming down after the plane crashes, pardon me, actually got me to take. I was in college at the time, or wasn't in college at the time. I took college later, and that incident had me take fire construction as one of my classes because I wanted to see how these things were built. Now, a little bit of background on those perpetrated 9/11. We all know that they came from a foreign country. Here's an interesting fact. There are a few of them that were out west taking flight lessons. They didn't want to learn how to take off. They didn't want to learn how to land. They just wanted to know how to steer the airplane, keep it in the air for an extended period of time. They didn't want to know nothing else about it. FBI agents on the ground actually called in their superiors, whether they were in that state, whether they were at Langley or even higher up in Washington, said, "Don't worry about it." Okay, well, thinking back and looking on it, those guys are probably kicking themselves in the butt a little bit, going, maybe we ought to listen to our field once in a while. The ludicrous idea came up that this was done as part of the whole New World Order thing, that Washington was in on it, that it was the inside job. Now, in memory of the 3,000 that lost their lives, the thousands of first responders that were either killed or injured or died later from serving 9/11, for those family members and friends who lost people on that fateful day, you'll always be in our hearts and on our minds. Here's the thing about this conspiracy theory. They thought that for two reasons. One, the ability to go to war. Two, the eradication of American freedoms of that the Constitution allows in this country. And they're saying, well, the towers came down and looked more as a controlled explosion. And if you've ever watched them take buildings down, it could appear that way. And I'm not going to say that it didn't appear that way. They found no evidence of that. Kind of like they didn't find any evidence in the 1990s of when McVeigh blew the Murray building in Oklahoma City, that it was an inside job, that he was just doing what he needed to do to, be a good soldier. And the Clinton administration wanted to go after the militias, so they had somebody infiltrate the Michigan militia and blow up this federal building. Sorry, my throat's a little rough today. Now, there's the connection with Alex Jones in this. He was one of the first ones that brought this up. This is one of the first things that actually put his name on the map, so to speak, in a more general platform and arena than just the few conspiracy idiots that listened to him before. This was the thing that really took him out there, really put him on the map. Because they're saying, the jet fuel and stuff ain't going to go through this. And you got to understand that the whole building wasn't fireproof, and that beyond a certain level, putting a fire out, it's impossible in a skyscraper because trucks and such only go so far. You can't use choppers to drop water like you would do on a wildfire. So things happen. They're tragic, but they happen. And not everything has a meaning behind it, except we had a bunch of guys that didn't like America, probably because America does have a tendency to stick its nose where it don't belong, and somebody punched it. But it doesn't mean that it's a conspiracy to take away our rights, be able to call a UN peacekeeping forces, and you know a lot of that stuff that they brought about 9/11. Saying that the footage at the Pentagon was doctored and it wasn't really a plane, and that it was a missile, and that it was an actual airliner that flew into one of the World Trade Towers, that it was a military, a large military aircraft, and so we could see what wearing these tinfoil hats do to people, and what made Trump so good at what he did on getting backing was he knew how to take the rhetoric that was going to trigger. He knew people weren't happy with Obama being the first black president of this country. They didn't like his progressive issues. They didn't like the fact that he did come up in a Muslim country because of who his mom married, which he had no choice with. So they were looking for something. And of course, was the everybody was upset. Everybody was worried about, the whole uh, New World Order cabal that was actually running the government. And Trump took it and he ran with it. And I'm sorry, but that's politics. It's called rhetoric. If you're going to win in an election, nobody wants to hear the truth. They want to hear what's going to, they think, affect and make their personal life better. To hell with the rest of the country. And so politicians take this one little thing and boom, they run with it. And if it makes a hook, then they just keep tugging on that line harder, adding more stuff to it, adding more stuff to it. Donald Trump was good about that. He was an excellent spin doctor, and I'll give that to him. He couldn't have been a good businessman without it. But the amazement that so many people fell for a hook, line, and sinker, all the way from the whole gotta drain the swamp thing to, you know, everybody coming across the border is a rapist and a murderer or a drug dealer, to the current one, which is the election was stolen. No, you lost, dude. And it amazes me that people buy into this, that they're so desperate to have something to cling to that they aren't willing to check the facts for themselves. That everything's a conspiracy. The fact that, yes, there were improprieties in voting. There are in every election. Accidents happen in every election. Misprogramming of the computers happen in every election. And if you don't believe me, look at the hanging chads in Florida in 2000. And I'm sorry, but I knew that Bush was going to win it. His brother was his brother was the governor at the time. But that's one of the bad things about social media. They allow hoaxes and the tinfoil mafia to spread whatever they want to, and people don't go and they don't check. Here's another one: the whole Democrats child sex ring thing. Now, if Epstein and his people had a sex ring going, they should be punished. The people involved seemingly were punished. He committed suicide, and no, I don't believe Hillary Clinton had people wipe his butt off the face of the earth. Personally, either he did it or he pissed somebody off in there, or, because here's the thing about it. He went in on a sex charge. Anybody knows anything about prison? Those guys don't really have a good time. Most of the time, they are put into protective custody. Why? Because the guys in there, as evil and as mean as they can be, they've got family on the outside. They want to make sure this bad boy don't get out. I don't know exactly all the details of his death, but Hillary didn't send somebody in to wipe him out. That's another conspiracy. One of the really bad things about this conspiracy, it had somebody go to a pizza hall because somebody said, "Oh, they're selling kids out of the basement of the pizza hall." Really? For the dude that owned the pizza hall. You know, go back, look up Pizzagate. It'll tell you. Dude walks in to this pizza joint. Now, I'm not going to say, "Oh, we got to get rid of the AR-15." That's just what he was carrying. I'd have mentioned it if he was carrying a 38 special revolver. So he goes in there because they were selling them out of the basement. They, sex trafficking, going out of the basement to the whole Epstein thing and Clinton and all them, and they're using this as a drop off point. So the guy who walks in and he couldn't find the dungeons and, you know, children chained to the walls or whatever he was looking for. So he finds his locked door and he shoots through it. And what does he find? It's a closet. I don't care what was back there. There wasn't anything that he was looking for, and a lot of businesses lock closets up. I used to do security in hospitals and business offices. There are a lot of locked rooms. Doesn't mean there's anything illegal sitting in that room. It just means nobody needs to be going in there unless it's open. So this is the beginning of QAnon, the Q conspiracy, and we heard it the whole QAnon thing, especially during the Trump administration and with the assault on the Capitol on the 6th. This is where QAnon started. This is where it got its lifeblood from. Now, was it anywhere before there? I don't know. I don't watch 4chan, which is the channel that it was on at the time. But this was their big break. This is what put QAnon on the map. And to think that somebody actually took all of this seriously to the point that he went into some poor dude's pizza shop and did what he did. Luckily, nobody got killed. Hopefully, everybody got their pizza comps. Maybe a free pizza or something. Enjoy the floor show. Here's a free pizza next time you come in. I don't know. But this shows the power of conspiracy. This shows, how do I put this as nice as possible? It shows the unintelligence of part of the American people. And anybody overseas that listens to conspiracy theories, but being that I live here in the U.S. and we've seen the whole Trump 9/11, and trust me, we've had more than our share of conspiracies in this country. That we have people openly willing to believe something that is so preposterous that it makes a great story for a book or a movie, but not for reality. And with some of these conspiracy theories and the actions that are taken during these conspiracy theories, Hollywood can't be that good because some of these things are beautifully entwined and wrapped because they take modern culture, modern fear, and wrap it so tight together that things do it. The whole scare over COVID, that, oh, it was released from Wuhan. Well, it might have been. I'm not going to say that it wasn't. There's no evidence to that fact that it was anything more than at least an accident that got out into the air, became airborne, and spread across the earth. And I'm sorry, but diseases do crazy things like that. You don't have to purposely put it into the air. Things leak out. You don't believe me? Drive down to some place that uses that propane and things for farmers, especially in the wintertime, so you can see it. And there's always going to be at least one tank there that's actually leaking the gas that is being held into the air. Does anybody release it? No. But it's eventually going to walk through town, and if you got your windows open, it's going to make you sick to smell. Living in farm country, you deal with it. Doesn't mean somebody's trying to use poisonous gas to wipe out the population around the mill. So then they got this whole bright idea, and this ties into the Georgia stones, which were destroyed here not too long ago. It's population control. They're doing it to wipe out the population, which is amazing considering the same people saying, oh, they're using it for population control are also the ones that were taking horse medicine to try to deal with it. And the tie-in with the Georgia Stones, and if you don't know what the Georgia Stones are, they're called America's Stonehenge. They were put up supposedly by some doctor in 6 different languages, and it talked about if there was a worldwide apocalypse, what it would take to get civilization back on track. That in itself doesn't sound bad. What does sound bad is the first couple of lines that talk about things like eugenics. So of course, it was already a conspiracy thing. But what tied it into COVID and all these other conspiracies is it says governance and establishment of a world government, population and reproduction control, the environment and humankind's relationship to nature, spirituality, maintain humanity under 500 million perpetual balance with nature. If they hadn't put that part on there, everybody would be going, oh, cool. What to do after an apocalypse so we can get civilization back on track. But they put these couple of lines in there, and now it fits in with COVID, and it fits in with 9/11. Then it fits in with people like Alex Jones, who, like I said, need to loosen the tinfoil. And we've had conspiracies since the 1990s. People, with all the infinite universal knowledge at our fingertips from now all the way back to antiquity, at your fingertips on a computer, look up anything you want to. Here's an idea. Quit going to social media to get your news and your information. Quit playing games on your internet and start looking the stuff up for yourself, because some of these conspiracy theories are not only getting stupid, they're getting extremely dangerous. This has been News and Perspective. From Center Porch, I'm Mark Schaffner. We'll be talking to you later, if the good Lord's willing and the creek don't rise.